Welcome back to the Midday Reset. My name is Antoinette, and today I want to share with you an app called hiMoment, and that's spelled HIMOMENT, hiMoment. So I came across this app after the director of marketing for hiMoment reached out to me about collaborating on some content for listeners who are looking for tools they can use to manage stress, anxiety, depression, and other mental ailments. So for this episode, I'm sharing an interview that I did with one of hiMoment's creators, Christoph. I enjoyed getting to hear about the app's founding and some of the main goals of the hiMoment app. So keep listening to hear more information about this journaling app you can put on your phone and use as you continue in your journey toward confidence, inner peace, happiness, anything else that you're aiming for. Enjoy! Okay, so I am joined today by Christoph. He is one of the founders of the app hiMoment, which is an application dedicated to the mission of helping people be happier through useful tools for changing habits. So hello, Christoph.
Hi there, how are you doing?
I'm pretty good today. How about you?
I'm doing great. I'm actually in the mountains of Austria, having a small retreat. It's beautiful up here. You should see the sky and the clouds and the mountains. It's just spectacular.
Well, that sounds absolutely gorgeous, and it sounds like the perfect setting for you to join us from for this interview for today.
I couldn't figure out a better way to do this. You're right. Yeah.
So let's get started by talking about hiMoment, this app that you helped to found. Tell me a little bit about the history of how that was created.
Well, that's a very long story, but I'll try to keep it short. I was actually not always a founder of an application that helps people become happier. I started to work in finance actually, and very quickly, climbed the corporate ladder, you can say. But the whole experience left me kind of like very empty feeling. So, having reached most of the goals I set out to reach, I was 27. I was like, I don't feel much happier. So I dug into the science of happiness, the research that, positive psychology is the name of like what makes people happier, right? What causes happiness and what are the effects of happiness? And what I found there was so amazing that I thought, I need to share this with as many people as I possibly can. And I did this first by, introducing my friends to it, and then gradually developing a method that worked really well for me, worked really well with people in my surrounding. And then one day I suggested it on an internet forum called Reddit. It's quite big, and it went viral there. And people were asking for, this is seems like a great method, and I wish there was an app for that, is what people wrote. And so I'm like, okay, let's build an app for it. So I found a team of people who joined me on the mission, and we founded it together. And we have been doing this since the end of 2017, and we now have 100,000 users. And we make one of our users happier every 8 seconds. So it's quite amazing. Yeah. It's really quite amazing, and it fills me with a lot of gratitude because, there's a lot of long days at the office. Obviously, when you found a startup, it's a lot of pressure, a lot of long nights working. But when I don't feel too good, I just simply count to 8. And then I know that we made one more person happier, and that's really, really cool. So that's how we started, and the method behind it started out rather simple. So it's a journaling process. hiMoment is, in its essence, a journal that asks you one question every day. And that question changed my life, and it can change your life. The question is simple. What was the best thing that happened to you today? And when you answer that question at the end of a long day, initially you might have to think a bit. It took me like 20 minutes on the first day. But if you do actually answer it, write it down, or maybe take a photo of that moment, that gradually rewires your brain to be able to, experience and see happiness as it happens, right? As it appears in your everyday life, and then slowly you'll be able to see more and more good things happen on a daily basis to you, because usually we kind of tend to ignore the daily happiness that surrounds us because we're always looking for big moments. Now we are chasing after a career breakthrough or a wedding or something like that, even though the research is quite clear that these things are great as they are, but for long-term happiness, they just don't cut it.
Mm-hmm.
Small moments, if only you could see them, and everyone has them in their daily lives. They have the actual power to really change of how you view your life, how you perceive your life. And that's what it does. So that's how it starts. Write down or take a photo of that one thing that made your day, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the core of it. And that's how we started. And that went really well. But then we found something that was even more fascinating to us. And it's been so fascinating that we actually hired an expert in neuroscience and an expert in artificial intelligence to work with it. So we figured that it's not only interesting to write down these small nice moments in your lives, it's also really great to review them every once in a while. And we do this by sending you a curated sequence of your past memories, your personal memories. You can do this every day if you want. I start with it usually in the morning, the first 5 minutes. And what that does is when you're confronted with a memory of yours, a positive one, the brain tries to remember things by reliving them. So mentally, it activates the same areas in the brain that were active back then, which means a happier memory, when you look at it, makes you happy in the now. A memory where you felt confident makes you more confident. A memory where you were motivated to do your workout makes you more motivated to do your workout right now, which is really cool because it means that we can use our past to enhance our present.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we've been kind of like, that's the breakthrough that we are working on, to really be able to use the right kind of moments from your past in the right situation to give you a boost of whatever mindset you want to have. You can work on happiness, you can work on confidence, on self-love, on relationships. There's so many different things you can do with this, and it works with the power of your memories. It doesn't need any content that's impersonal. It doesn't need any, I don't know what other things are there. There's no meditation sessions or something. This is your life, helping you to really, achieve what you want to achieve right now. And that's so fascinating about it. So this has worked really, really well, and people do this around 500,000 times a month. So that's a lot of people getting a lot of happiness boosts through
A lot of happy memories.
That too, yeah. So there's a lot of them on there, and we have kind of like dedicated us to doing research in an anonymized way. So we know a lot about happiness, what makes people happier, and we can see differences between countries and differences between age groups and these things. And these are very fascinating insights that we collect along the way, and we believe that it will help us to to go even further in our mission to make people happier.
Mm-hmm. And I know that something that you and I were discussing just earlier is this idea that happiness, oftentimes people perceive that happiness is something that they have to go out and find, that it's something that is outside of themselves and they have to kind of go and find it, sort of like that butterfly that they are not able to catch, as you mentioned earlier. And so I wanted to ask you to speak a little bit about the observations that you're finding with happiness and whether or not that is something that is truly external or if it's something that can be found more internally, based on this research that you've done and the experiences that you've had and the feedback that you've gotten through all of the users who are using hiMoment.
Absolutely, yeah. It's one of the biggest misconceptions that we think we have to wait for happiness, that it's something out there coming to you or waiting for you. We usually say that happiness is more like a muscle that you can train, and you can train it by putting attention to it. So it's not something that you will be able to do overnight. It's not a weekend seminar of happiness. It requires some, small but constant effort over time. You need to build a habit around a topic. And what research has shown that at least 40% of our happiness, is down to our actions and to our habits and to our thinking. There is a genetic component. It's roughly 50%. But at least 40%, even the pessimist has to agree that the glass is at least 40% full. And that's a very empowering message. And that's something that we like to spread to everyone.
Wonderful. And I really like that comparison of happiness is a muscle, because I think a lot of times we have a hard time understanding some of this intangible stuff, some of the abstract things. If you wanted bigger biceps, you would have to train at the gym. You would also need to make sure that you are eating the right foods that can help you to develop muscles and build on, your muscle tissue. Because if your body doesn't have the nutrients that it needs, it's not going to be able to build the muscle that you're looking for. And so those are very easy things for people to kind of get on board with and sign up for, joining a gym or hiring a trainer or things like that. But when it comes to some of these mental steps that we take, such as finding happiness and finding contentment, I think that a lot of times we just assume that that must be somewhere out there in some big grand experience or some really huge accomplishment, and not necessarily within, the development that we can do on ourselves and training of ourselves.
Absolutely. Yeah. You really said it right. It's these, I can't blame people for thinking that these big accomplishments or big events are going to make them happy, because we see this every day in the media, right? Mm-hmm. And we hear about it. And now we also see from our friends on social media, where everybody shows the best side of who they are, right? I can't blame them, but I always say that, can you imagine that if you lift weights one time, even if it's 500 pounds miraculously, and you can lift it, you think your muscle will be trained? No, it won't, right? And it's the same with big events, right? If you want to, develop actual physical muscles, you have to work out consistently. And it's the same with happiness. These one-time big events, they might be nice and they will be great memories. Yeah? But in order to train your happiness muscle, you need repetition. And that's basically what we're trying to provide with our application.
Mm-hmm. And when you were speaking about the journal and how there's one question each day about what was the best thing that happened to you that day, I see that as being so habit forming, because they say that it takes, 21 days to form a habit. You have to do something consistently for 21 days in order to form a habit. And so this idea that you are taking notice of whatever the best thing was that happened to you that day over the course of a series of days, opening up the possibility of you being able to recognize more happiness, or at least shift your perspective in a way that you can look at the daily events of your life and find more gratitude in them and find more comfort in them. And, looking at these things like, oh, that could be what I write about today for my hiMoment journal entry for the best thing that happened to me today, because you're suddenly now taking notice of these things. You mentioned
actually really works. It really works for almost everyone who just goes and survives the first days, especially the pessimists. Struggle maybe in the first couple of days. That's why we have an onboarding, with maybe one exception, and that's really actually suffering from depression. In this case, I really cannot recommend our method. It is something that you would have to talk with your therapist over. But unless you're kind of clinically depressed, the method works on everyone who gives it that time, right? It does not come over overnight. In the beginning, you have to power through, really think about it. And we do have some starting exercises for you to do, where you don't need to be a master of observation to find that happy moment on the day. maybe you just do something actively, something that we suggest maybe, and that works for you. And that's how we can, stimulate it a little bit. And when you go through that first, is it 21 days? Some people say it's 60 days. It doesn't really matter. It's all about creating a habit around it. And then you can't unsee it anymore. And that's the fascinating thing.
That is so wonderful about happiness being something that you can't unsee.
Yeah, no, it starts, the most difficult question in the beginning is like, what was that one thing that was good today? But later down the line, the most difficult thing for you is going to be which of all these great things is actually the best today. So that's kind of like a complete change in perspective from like not knowing if there's anything in your life that adds happiness to not being able to choose which one is really the one that made your day. And that's a wonderful transition. And whenever we see people going through that transition, usually that's when they start writing us and say like, oh my God, I've just done this now. And it's like, I can't decide. It's wonderful. Right? I haven't felt this way. We get a lot of this feedback, and it feels really great. I mean, that's why we're doing it, because we want to have like help change people, and that's really what I just recommend. In the beginning, it might be difficult. It took me 20 minutes on the first day of doing that method. 20 minutes, and I think most people, it doesn't take that long. But I was really very pessimistic. But then it gets easier and easier. And you gain all this energy from it. Because here's the thing, happiness is not just a goal in itself, it fuels all these other things in your personal development. It boosts your health, it boosts your social relationship, it boosts your career. There's like so much research showing that it should be the number one thing on our national agenda, on our political agenda, to make people happier. Because our world would be a much better place as a result.
Right. And I am a firm believer in that as well, which is part of what I'm trying to do with affecting change with the midday reset also. And I've spoken to my listeners multiple times about journaling and the power of journaling for being able to notice some of these patterns and these habits in our everyday lives. And so I really like the idea that, hiMoment is storing up a lot of these things so that you can reflect on them later and reflect on all of these happy memories and all of these positive boosts that you've gotten. And yes, that does create very fertile ground for great development in your personal life, in your professional life, in your interpersonal relationships, when you are talking to people through friendships or romantic relationships, the colleagues that you meet. So that all sounds so, so wonderful. So you've told me a bit about the founding of hiMoment, the history of it. You gave me the short version. Thank you. Tell me what hiMoment is working on now. What are you currently developing to bring to the app and to bring to people who are looking to find more happiness?
Oh, we're working on a lot of things, and I'm really looking forward to the next big thing that we're doing. So we currently see that people are, journaling might be difficult for people, writing things down. That's a habit that's difficult to teach. What people are really good at is taking photos. So on the average smartphone, you have around 600 photos, and those are full with moments that we think are worth being in hiMoment. And what we're doing now is we've built an image recognition, kind of like an artificial intelligence that looks through your photos and picks the ones that we think these are going to make you happy. These were happy memories. And it does so with completely, it protects your privacy while it's doing that. And it picks out all of those 600 pictures, and some of them are food pictures that you don't care that much about, or there's like a photo of a business card you took or something, but it skips those, and it really takes the best of the best, and then you can easily import them into hiMoment, and then you start with 50, 100, or even more really beautiful moments. It's like you start a journal, but it's already full, and that's kind of like a big thing that we've been working on for some time, because it's quite something to do, right? We had to analyze over 700,000 photos to do that. And again, it's not us that did that. It was a program, so there's no privacy breach or something.
Mm-hmm.
Difficult. And from that, we know exactly what is it that we have to look for that makes people happier. Yeah. Is it photos of nature? Is it photos of friends? Is it people smiling? Is it your family? Is it your dog, right? Or is it the food photo that you take? And we know this quite well now, being in for 1.5 years into this and having done a lot of research, and that will really help. And we believe that this is a great way to reconnect people to their past and to provide them, with boosts from their past to enhance their present. That's one thing that we're doing. The other thing I'm very excited about, but I can't share too many details with you, but we're working on with kind of well-known coaches on special programs that help people develop mindsets apart from happiness. Happiness is the number one thing that we want people to train, because it's the starting point for everything else. But while you're at it, why not work on your optimism? Why not work on your confidence and your self-love, on your relationship?
Mm-hmm.
So we want to provide expert guidance with, very easy to do, simple challenges that you can incorporate into your everyday life to do that. You might have read the occasional self-help book or self-improvement book. You probably remember it was really exciting to read about this. You were motivated to, incorporate this into your everyday life. But then you put it back on your bookshelf and thought, okay, how do I do this? Like, how do I, make this a habit? And that's exactly what we're going to provide. Yeah. But I can't talk more about this, but there's going to be some bigger names behind that, hopefully. And I can't wait to release it.
Oh, that sounds very exciting. I really like that you seem to be taking all of these wonderful tools that can help people to develop themselves and improve themselves, and you've sort of put them into a nice interface for people to use, because people touch their phones all the time. They're constantly fidgeting with their phones and looking at their phones, and it's almost like hiMoment is that coach and that boost and that little spark of happiness that people have in their pocket. They have it in their phone, and I think that makes some of the barriers that people encounter with trying to get some of that help and reach some of those tools, because even with books, people sometimes don't even know where to start, which books to read and who to follow, and which people can be inspirational for them for what it is that they are trying to achieve, because most of the time we get more of a benefit from people who we feel some type of a connection with, or who we feel that, they've had a similar struggle as what I'm going through. And so that's something that I can connect to. And I see hiMoment as making those barriers much easier to get past, because the accessibility is becoming so much greater by putting it into this app.
Absolutely. It's accessibility, and it's the quickness. You don't need to spend half an hour in our app. Actually, we don't recommend it. The whole thing is built around maybe a 5-minute a day exercise, is what we say, and not more, because if anything, our phones are very good at making us unhappy. That's not something that we want. But on the other hand, as you said, it's right there in your pocket. It has some great photo memories on it, and those are wonderful if they're utilized in the right way, right? So maybe next time, if you take a nice photo, don't share it with social media, with other people, share it with yourself. And that's basically what we are about.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. And so if there's any pieces of advice that you would like to hand off to the Midday Reset listeners, anyone else who comes across this interview, what kinds of things would you say, Christoph?
I think the most important thing is that I want to tell to people who are really struggling that, I can relate where you are, how you feel. I know it's very difficult, and maybe, hearing that it gets better, and the people that were affected by that struggle a lot, that it got better. I hope that helps kind of to power through the difficult time. I think that's very important. to tell to people. I want to tell everyone that they can take happiness into their own hands. Yeah, like that's something that you can do. It's not a destiny; it's a muscle that you can train. And there's many ways of how you can reach that. And I'm sure that listening to your podcast is one of them, because you learn so many great things. That's why I'm so happy that I can be part of it. There's many ways to do it. Meditation is great. Learning about it is great. What we are doing is to say, like, we can use your past, your great moments, to really boost you in the now, and it works really well. And if you want to try it out, it's completely free to try, and you never have to pay for it if you don't want to. Happiness should be free, and that's kind of like our promise.
That's wonderful, especially the part about how happiness should be free, because I definitely believe in that too. Well, I thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so glad that we got a chance to have this talk, and I'm looking forward to the future developments of hiMoment and getting to see all of these wonderful tools that you are developing to help people who are struggling. And if users want to find you, listeners want to find you, where can they find you? Are you on social media?
We are, but just go to the app stores. It's out on Google Play and the App Store, and you can just simply type in hiMoment, and you'll find us there. Or you can visit us on our website, www.hiMoment.com, and then you can read more about our scientific approach and what we're trying to do. And of course, we provide links to the app stores there as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your time, Christoph.
Thank you so much. It was really, really a pleasure.